My name is Changlani. I am the director of a chartered accounting firm, All 360, based in Auckland, Newmarket, and Wellington, Lower Hutt. I'm also a board member of INZBC, which is India New Zealand Business Council, based in New Zealand. Today, our webinar is on the disruption of global supply chain and learning outcomes and opportunities for India as well as New Zealand. We've got three speakers today. I've got Mark Shepherd, Associate Partner, Supply Chain and Operation, EY, New Zealand. I've also got Prediman, who's a country head, Airfreight, Member Management Board, Jeena International. And I've got Paramjeet Singh, Second Secretary, Political and Information and Commercial, High Commissioner of India, Wellington. So, without further ado, I'll start with Mr. Mark Shepherd. So Mr. Mark Shepherd is an associate partner at EY with over 30 years of international experience in supply chain optimization, procurement, operational strategy, and manufacturing excellence. He has delivered numerous supply chain, manufacturing, and strategic sourcing projects for New Zealand's leading primary industry companies, and regularly provides supply chain subject matter expertise for EY clients. He has completed over 100 major assignments in 12 countries, including India. In India, he's acted for Kalyani Brothers, Modi Brothers, and Tata Group. At the present time, he marketed a leading EY New Zealand COVID-19 response for the SME NZ business, combining tax, financial, and operational assistance and solution as we move to level 3, to level 2, to level 1. So without further ado, Mark Shepherd, I hand it over to you to start your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jay. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on what part of the world you're in. So I've got a short presentation here to give you a high-level view of some of the disruption that we're seeing globally in terms of supply chain, and also home in a little bit, particularly around New Zealand, of what we're experiencing with a number of our clients. So if you think about COVID-19, this pandemic, well, it's a global disruption. Previous disruptions like the GFC or even the earthquake in New Zealand, we've seen lasting effects and considerable amount of time for the economy to recover, or even Christchurch to recover. Even today, businesses have still not relocated back into Christchurch, and it's been a very slow process. So COVID-19, and World Health Organization has just announced it's not going to go away, it's going to be with us for a long time. And what COVID-19 has basically unleashed some pretty sweeping changes in terms of reshaping our global economy, leading to some technological innovation, and it's changing the way we're going to be working in the future into what's likely to be the new normal. So during the course of this short presentation, I want to share with you some of the insight we're seeing or what we're hearing from our clients as to how COVID-19 is affecting them. So from a New Zealand or India perspective, so we've basically now been living with this COVID-19 for best part of 4 months. New Zealand just moved yesterday into what we call level 2, and the budget's just been announced, which is a doubling of borrowings in New Zealand up to 200 billion, and a major stimulation project, infrastructure projects being stimulated by government. So business performance, not only in New Zealand but globally, as you know, has been impacted, and companies are trying to find ways to best respond to this new normal. The impact of COVID-19 has really been magnified in a complex trade environment. And take New Zealand, we're a long way from our markets, and some of the logistics can be fairly complex. We have specific free trade agreements, and it's having a major impact the way we operate now and the way we'll operate in the future. Supply chains have obviously been heavily impacted, so we've seen disruption in production due to social distancing, so people not being able to work as closely to each other, and that's had an impact on the throughput in manufacturing and productivity. We've had logistical issues, particularly when we're at the start of COVID-19 at level 4. We saw things being delayed at ports in terms of being able to clear goods at ports if they were non-essential goods. That has eased certainly in the last couple of months, but at the beginning it really had a significant impact on effectively getting goods moved in and around New Zealand. We've also had a lot of difficulties at accessing some of our logistics companies in terms of supply routes, also and flow-on effect on cities and country shutdowns. The next slide I have is, well, what are the potential outcomes? And I'm sure a number of you will have seen the sort of 3 models. Is a V shape, which would be the ideal case that we basically snap back out of this very, very quickly, highly unlikely. The next model that you've heard about is like a U-shaped recovery, so a significant drop, leveling at the bottom, and then a steep recovery. Some commentators think this is one of the most likely outcome. But then we have the worst case scenario where effectively an L shape, where it's sort of the new normal, and COVID-19, as I've just said, likely to be here for a long time. So it's probably somewhere in between the 2 models of a U shape and an L shape in terms of recovery. And that may vary by country, by type of product or service that you supply. So it's not one size will fit all. In terms of COVID-19, it's also effectively magnified some of the typical problems that we experience or you see in supply chains in terms of inventory levels, trying to balance demand and supply, or having the stock in the right locations. Now, only a few hours ago, I spoke to one of my clients, and they run a very, very advanced S&OP supply chain operations planning tool. Typically, it's been demand-driven, but given the disruption through COVID-19, effectively, it's now production-driven. So basically, what product can I manufacture, and therefore, how do I best allocate that to the market? So COVID-19 has caused all sorts of disruptions right across the whole of the value chain and supply chain. Traditionally, supply chain models have been basically pretty linear models. And what I mean by linear is looking to optimize on cost, have a lean supply chain. A lot of work has been done around defining your strategic suppliers, key alliances, so having a limited number of suppliers. There's been limited investment in technology, and it's really sort of an end-to-end or even just-in-time type of inventory supply chain you're running. So what COVID-19 has done is effectively highlighting, well, have I got the concentration of my vendors correct? Have I got my locations of where I'm supplying goods and services geographically in the right places? How can I work on my data, get better visibility of my product where it is at any given time? So traditionally, the linear supply chain has not been well, or if at all, prepared for the kind of event that we're experiencing now, and it's not really resilient. So, and this is not new. There has been a trend over the last few years, particularly with the onslaught of digital, of possibly moving from a linear type model, which you see here on the left in this chart in yellow, to effectively starting to develop more of an ecosystem where you are cooperating with what were previously some of your competitors, and a new word is appearing, like co-opetition. So it's a combination of competition and cooperation, and creating this ecosystem of not trying to have everything in-house, providing all the services and support requirements in-house, but effectively finding close alliances with other organizations who can effectively help you manage part of your supply chain. So in terms of globalization and trade, there are 3 key steps that we see that you probably want to consider in terms of how you may want to reorient your supply chain and your manufacturing response to COVID-19. And there are really 3 steps. Is really what you do now, which is the immediate next 2 to 3 months of what should you focus on. before you start thinking, exploring the next and really the beyond. So in terms of the now, it is really understanding where the major vulnerabilities in your supply chain and rethinking the way you may want to configure that. One of the, particularly for smaller to medium enterprises, the key thing they're focusing on right now is cash and cash flow, and really looking how they basically basically diversify and build a little more resilience into their supply chain before they move on to the medium term, developing risk mitigations. Probably some of the social distancing that we're seeing at the moment is likely to stay for quite a while. So that the way you configure your offices, the way human to human interaction will occur in the future, and you may have to have increased physical barriers, whether it's in manufacturing, whether it's in your office environments. The third thing we'll also see is there's likely to be, we've lived in a world of globalization, there is a potential trend to move back to more localization in that of onshoring services that you've had offshore previously, bringing that back into your own country from an employment perspective, but also from looking to de-risk your business. The final slide I want to jump into is, here are sort of three views from what the sort of things you should be looking at in the short term. So really stress testing and looking to adapt your action plans, looking at your customer. There has been certainly a change or a shift in customer behavior that we're definitely seeing here in New Zealand. For instance, a reluctance to travel, reluctance to go into malls. So you really need to understand, how has the behavior of your customer currently changed? Some of the aspects you may want to look at in terms of your marketing plans, your promotions, whether it's actually giving you value for money. So there's a 2 to 3 months is looking at the now, what can you change, and particularly in terms of your cash flow, and basically cash is king right now, before you start looking at mid to longer term actions. In terms of just generally in terms of New Zealand, we're also seeing a trend towards more business to consumer. So smaller organizations are using existing platforms to try and provide their goods directly to people's homes and bypassing the retailers. So there's a trend towards more B2C. In terms of manufacturing, we've also seen, as I say, changes in the workplace in terms of social distancing, and that's led to a drop in productivity. But in some cases, in support services, the fact that people are now working from home using Microsoft Teams, or like we're using now, Zoom, some organizations have actually seen an increase in productivity of their support staff, basically not interfering with manufacturing, which is one of the comments I had. So,
fantastic, Mark. Yeah. So what I would do is, Mark, I'll bring you back later on with the Q&A side of it, and we'll probably ask you some questions in there. I actually encourage everybody to please put any questions you may have in the Q&A, so we can ask specifically Mark any questions around that. Yeah. I think, Mark, is there any last final sentence or any, Mark, that you want to address? Or?
No, I'll wait for the questions and try and answer them to my best ability.
Okay, I understand that Mark is happy to share his presentation with the attendees, so you'll be more than welcome. You'll be having this presentation from Mark emailed to you subsequent to this meeting. Now, the next presenter that we have is Mr. Prediman Kaul. Prediman Kaul is the country head Airfreight member management board of Jeena International. He has been working with Jeena and Company for last 23 years, and at present he's heading Airfreight division of the company and is a member of management board. So with further ado, I'll hand it over to Prediman. And as I said, I just want to remind you again, please leave your questions in the Q&A so that we can actually use that. We're going to have 25 minutes for the Q&A. Please do that. and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions you may have. Prediman, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody attending from New Zealand. So I have tried to put my points on the table, which are actually exact situations which we have faced during this COVID and the lockdown. And I'm sure my friends from India will relate to these basic points. And I thought it is a good idea to share with our friends and colleagues from New Zealand as well. So the thought is what happened immediately when coronavirus came into India and government started implementing the safety measures. So after lockdown, we realized that warehouses are closed. We can't really access them. Business activities have gone down or maybe standstill. Transport movements could not happen. Companies were not able to move the imports out of the ports. Whatever imports had come into India, say at the seaports or airports, they were not able to move to the factories, warehouses, which has created a big kind of a backlog at the ports as well as at the airports. And they have also, the side effect was the lot of damages, detention charges for the importers. Although government tried to waive off certain kind of charges, certain percentage, but yet the bills are big, and still there is a dialogue happening between the importers, the logistic fraternity, and the governments. Ports were working, airports were working, but then transport was not available. So how to move goods or imports or exports? Then the biggest challenge came in with the daily wage laborers who wanted to leave from the business hubs, metro cities to their own native places because they were left without a daily job. Even if the industrial belts were having those workers, those laborers, but they were also not able to move because of the restrictions, and rightly so. So huge impact on the material movements, on the sourcing. If somebody wanted to source a new kind of a base, but that was not possible because of the travel restrictions and other kind of the restrictions. And there was a big effect on the logistic supply chain network as well. And although we were, as a company, we were involved and we are still involved in the critical logistic management for the government bodies doing these COVID testing kits and other medicines, other infrastructure. And we saw how the government bodies were coordinating, synchronizing with each other to make sure that critical supplies, they are not affected by these lockdown measures. But for the general businesses, there was a big issue, and still we see it's not fully gone. And another major aspect, I think, which Mark also touched upon is the consumer's behavior. So we have been seeing it, and we will see it for some time down the line as well. So whatever was being sold may not be sold. There will be new kinds of demands from the demand point of view. But certain, I would say, positive news that Government of India has relaxed certain activities and situation we see moving towards a semi-normalcy kind of a situation. Transport movements are allowed. Now warehouses can operate, business activities with certain restrictions are able to operate. And with the announcement of government and PM just one day before, we are expecting a softer kind of a lockdown 4 if it happens finally. But business will be moving faster than what is happening today or for last 2 months. We are also seeing ports and airports getting decongested, but still what I mentioned, the demurrage and detention charges are a pain area for the trade that I'm sure some government intervention will come into play. And another positive news that transportation of the trains, like the public transport on the trains, has been started also recently, just 2 days back. Now, potential challenges which we see when the business comes to a certain reasonable level of the activity percentage, the labor shortage will be felt. It is already being felt, and it will be felt severely when the the activity of manufacturing or supply chain or other labor intensive activities will start. We are already witnessing a great impact, negative impact on the transportation, where the drivers are not available because they have also shifted to their native places. So it is impacting on the last mile deliveries, first mile pickups, then our shifting the containers to the ports or from the ports, airports, which could be a big challenge going forward for Indian industry. But some, again, every problem gets some opportunities and positives also with it. So we have seen India, right from the government to the common man, the digitalization, the online, the paperless things have really taken a big leap. So during this period of 2 months, government has come up with a lot of new notifications, allowing trade to do business, custom clearances, and deliveries of goods based on the e-documents rather than physical documents. Payments are being done on the portals, and work from home culture has taken a big traction today. And I'm connected with our colleagues in the industry, intra-industry, inter-industry. So a lot of organizations are planning this work from home as a new normal for the business. So which will definitely reduce some costs for the organizations, for the economy, and increase the efficiency as well. And like I said, paperless business transactions have taken a great leap now. So India anyways has a lot of opportunities even before COVID, but after COVID, there are a lot of new, globally new shape is taking place. So India is in epicenter of those new good opportunities. There are countries like USA, Japan, Germany, who has already taken some measures of divesting their investments in current countries, and India is looking forward to receive those investments, or maybe a good portion, sizable portion of that. Government is already looking at providing a big boost to the infrastructure projects and giving ease of doing business a big thrust. It has been already on the planning of the government, but now this would be fast-tracked. So Make in India is already a big dream project of Indian government, but with this new development, 25 sectors have been identified where the investments would be coming in or already started coming in, and government will do a lot of relaxations in the norms wherever necessary. And there is a robust middle class which provides lucrative market, and which helps to the investors, the companies who puts the base in India to make effective, cost-effective, and quality products in India. So some sectors I have mentioned: food, entertainment, education, sports, service industry, healthcare, electric appliances, office cost reductions by redoing the office or by work from home measures. And this is about our organization. We are 119 years old organization doing logistics and supply chain management services. Why I touched this, I just wanted to put this slide in front of all of the friends connected, that this is how we put our bit of contribution to the society during lockdown. We were integral supply chain part of ICMR, WHO, for importing the COVID testing kits and other support structure for these hospitals. And this happened because of our technology platforms, because I would stress here that all of us going forward should basically work around our strategies towards building the technology base so that we are ready for any kind of disruption, disturbance, or any kind of next wave, whatever we say, it can be in any shape. So what I'm saying is Indian logistic management has gone through a lot of testing during this period, and I'm sure we will come more experience and learn going forward. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Prediman. That was a really good presentation. What I would do is I've made a note of a few questions that I want to ask you, and I've got some questions popping up in the Q&A as well. We'll ask you in the question and answer round. Without further ado, I just request again, people want to put any Q&A, any questions, please put it for Prediman as well. We'll get him to speak in due course. Now, my next speaker and the final speaker for today is Paramjeet Singh, the Second Secretary, Political, Information and Commercial, High Commission of India, Wellington. Paramjeet joined Ministry of External Affairs in the year 1997 and worked in various capacity in Baghdad, Washington, DC, Ankara, Accra, and a couple of stints at Ministry of Affairs at the External Affairs headquarters, including as a desk officer for Australia and Malaysia. He joined as a High Commission of India, joined the High Commission of India, Wellington in March 2018 as Second Secretary, Council and Visa, assumed the role of head of political wing and commercial representative of High Commission of India in September 2009. Paramjeet is also one of the 25 most influential people driving India and New Zealand relations, and he was nominated by Indian Weekend, one of the leading Indian newspaper in the ethnic community. And as you know, so I'll hand it over to him now to carry on about what his thoughts are about India market.
Thanks, Jay, for the introduction and the opportunity. A disclaimer, though I represent government, I have taken utmost care to check my facts and figures, but nothing should be, it's a general discussion and it should not be claimed as a matter of right, anything that I say. As Jay said, I'm going to talk about the challenges and more importantly, the opportunities that Corona has thrown up at us. Friends, as my other panelists, co-panelists have said, COVID-19 pandemic, it will be an understatement to say that it has thrown up huge and unprecedented challenges, and its impact will be felt in the months and years and decades to come. However, the disruption has also given us an opportunity to reassess and reset the way we go about doing business. While the pandemic has proved particularly destructive for sectors such as tourism, hospitality, and aviation, it has opened up new opportunities in digital economy, gaming, e-commerce, pharma, to name a few. To put it in perspective, what has happened is that as far as supply chain management is concerned, for the last 30-40 years, all of our investment decisions were driven solely by the motives of competitiveness and profitability. And as a result, manufacturing and investment got heavily concentrated in a few regions and countries, with the associated vulnerabilities of having all eggs in few baskets. While there were already some simmering tensions in recent years, the pandemic has brought into sharp relief the fragility of our supply chains. Now, suddenly a pendulum has swung to the other extreme, and in a knee-jerk reaction, everybody has started talking about isolation, domesticating the supply chain, onshoring of services, as my friend Mark mentioned, though in a different context. Isolation is not the answer. We know that we all have our comparative advantages and limitations, and international trade and investment has been a key contributor to global prosperity, and we can't do away with that. At the end of the day, we need to strike a fine balance between competitiveness and resilience, and India today scores well on both these counts. Investors will be scoring the world today for nations that have shown themselves capable of managing the pandemic effectively, and India has so far shown exemplary resilience in this regard. WHO had in early days remarked that the course that the pandemic takes would depend on a large extent on how India is able to tackle it. And despite our large population and pockets of high population density, we have been able to contain its spread. We derive this resilience from the strength of our people in facing up to this tragedy stoically and bravely. Coming to the positive aspect of it, India presents itself as an attractive investment destination for the following reasons. India is world's largest democracy with rule of law, independent judiciary, and freedom of press. Talking about the size of the country, as we all know, it's a huge country with 1.3 billion people and an aspirational middle class of anything between 500 to 600 million people, depending on the criteria you adopt to count them. We have a nominal GDP of 3.2 trillion, projected to be 5 trillion by 2024. That is what we hope and aspire for. This makes us the third largest economy in the world. Amidst the corona doom and gloom, where most of the economies are expected to slip into negative territory, as per IMF estimates, India is expected to show a positive growth of 1.9% in the fiscal 2019-20. And even more remarkably, though it is still up in the air, it is a health tragedy and an economic tragedy. And the economic consequences will, at the end of the day, depend on how soon we are able to contain this problem. But still, IMF is projecting India to rebound strongly and to have a growth rate of up to 7% in the next fiscal, riding on our large domestic market, low commodity prices, particularly of oil, which is going to help us in a big way. As we all know, India is a big importer of crude. And the fiscal stimulus provided by the government, measuring up to 10% of our GDP, which was announced by our PM just yesterday. Not only India is a huge country in itself, it enjoys proximity to large markets in South and Southeast Asia, which makes it an effective base for corporations to export to other high growth emerging markets. I would once again quote the example of Glide Path, since we are talking in the context of India and New Zealand, a company which makes baggage handling instruments. It set up shop in Pune, and from there, it is catering to the whole of South Asia and Southeast Asia. It became so successful that it was recently bought by a French company, B2A. So that is a model we can emulate, we can take advantage, particularly small companies in New Zealand can reap the benefits of scale. That is one model that can be emulated. India has a young, skilled, productive, and yet cheap workforce conversant in English, the language of global business. Half of our population is below 25 years of age, and the median age of our working population is 28. Even as other countries age, India is going to be the skill supplier to the world. India is an easy place to do business, which is reflected in World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index. We have jumped massively in the last 5 years from 130th rank that we were placed 5 years back to 63 now, and still growing. It's a work in progress. Our ambition is to break into top 50 and even top 30 beyond that. We know New Zealand is number one, and we appreciate, we are trying to emulate the good things that you do. With 1 trillion worth of investments planned in infrastructure in the next 5 years on ports, roads, industrial corridors, smart cities, there are huge opportunities in FDI. Am I being told to be on standby? No. Liberalized FDI policy with 100% FDI through automatic route in all but a few sectors such as defense, telecom, media, pharmaceuticals, and insurance. Even for sectors where government approval is required for FDI, foreign investment facilitation portal is a single window, to facilitate all those approvals. FDI policy has only a couple of weeks been amended, requiring all entities belonging to countries with which India shares borders to be able to invest through the government approval route only. This has obviously been done to safeguard Indian companies from hostile takeovers during these vulnerable times. Government has several initiatives to promote investment and manufacturing, which are Make in India, primarily Invest India, Skill India, Digital India. On Make in India, my colleague Prediman has already elaborated, so I will not go a lot into its detail. I may be running out of time. India has utmost respect for intellectual property and contractual obligations, and Indian rules and dispute resolution mechanisms with respect to intellectual property protection are now fully compliant with WTO rules. India is also working on a new industrial policy aimed at promoting emerging sectors, reducing regulatory hurdles, and making India a manufacturing hub. The recent initiatives of Government of India for promoting FDI are, allowing digital media to have up to 26% FDI, which again aligns with the synergies of New Zealand, which I know is very strong in animation, visual effects, gaming, comics. There are 300 million online gamers in India, and this has only grown as we have been at home during the lockdowns. And it's a $2 billion industry. So this is something that can be explored. Insurance is another sector where up to 100% FDI has been allowed. Single brand retail has also been opened up to 100% FDI, subject to few conditions like procuring 30% goods from India. E-commerce is another area, with India having 800 million internet connections, up to 400 million smartphone users. We are talking big time here. India has provided a 10-year tax holiday for operators of ports and inland waterways, 100% FDI in ports and shipping. We have a Sagarmala program to harness our long coastline and inland waterways, which again will throw up immense opportunities for investment.
Yes, Paramjeet ji, we just have got to wrap up the last sentence, very last point, and I'll bring you back again in the Q&A because there'll be a Q&A after this.
Sure.
Yes. Do you have any last final comments, or do you?
No, just I say that India, this is a blip. I don't know how long it is going to be, but India's growth story is intact, and we invite the world to partake in this story. Yeah.
Fantastic. First of all, thank you everybody. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Prediman, and thank you, Paramjeet ji, for coming along and giving your time and giving us such a nice presentation. I really appreciate that on behalf of INZBC. Now, I have got some questions, and I can see there's a lot of questions that popped in now. Paramjeet, you spoke about you touched on the Make in India, but we haven't actually got into Make in India in detail. But there's a specific question on Make in India, which is talking about, is there a success story around Make in India? How do you define Make in India a success story?
See, this initiative was launched by our Prime Minister in 2014 with the purpose of making India a global manufacturing hub by encouraging both multinational as well as domestic companies to manufacture their products within the country. As my colleague Prediman mentioned, we are focusing on 25 sectors of the economy, which range from automobile to information technology, business process management, details of which can be viewed on official site, which is www.makeinindia.com. It has been hugely successful in inviting FDI. Like last year also, I think we attracted an FDI of $46 billion or so. So yeah, it has been quite successful.
Fantastic. So that answers one of the questions. Now, one thing is that I want to ask the second question to Mark. Now, Mark talked about various opportunities in different sectors. I've got a specific question on digital platform that he touched on. He talked about the digital platform. So I want to talk about digital platform, and also he also touched upon, Mark, you touched upon the packaging issue due to social distancing. So what's the solution you think the freight companies or custom agencies could look at, or packaging company to look at in this space, like packaging, social distancing issue, and the digital platform?
I'll touch first on the digital platforms, just in a more general aspect. So we're seeing organizations effectively accessing existing e-commerce platforms and looking to sell their products online, and particularly distribute food, beverage, education, and health products. And they're not only acting in terms of selling their own products, but also very often they're acting as agents for other organizations, other companies, or providing a channel to market for others. So what we're seeing, and I touched on earlier, is, and I'm talking more specifically in the primary industry, which I focus on essentially in New Zealand, is that we're seeing small producers, growers, for instance, effectively using those platforms to offer their product directly to the end customer, therefore bypassing a wholesaler, a retailer. And the question is, will that remain in place long term? As we know, historically, we tend to revert to our previous behaviours. What I mean by that, does that mean the demise of bricks and mortars and physical locations where we purchase items? I believe not. I think these platforms will grow, but the physical locations where you experience purchasing items will remain and probably will revert to a degree the percentage of what we've seen in the past.
Fantastic. Now, thank you so much, Mark, for that answer. I want to jump to Prediman. Prediman, there are three things you talked about as well around the challenges, technology help, and opportunities. Before you jump into that and answer that question specifically about the opportunities in this situation, I've got a specific question here in the Q&A which talks about the documentation, the tedious documentation, the going through the tariff reduction, and also the quick or the long-term turnaround time for some of the situations that we face in certain circumstances. So I just wanted to just touch on these points as well as talk about opportunities that you see in this situation that we are in.
See, I will break your this questions in two parts. One would be on the transit times. And yes, it was kind of a situation the whole world and India was no different. We faced, so there was a delay in the transit times, and we see the transit time delay may remain there for some more time. If you today see ports have started operating, but then there is no 100% attendance of the say workers or the people on the machines, and even the shipping lines are showing some blank sails. A lot of blank sailing is happening where the ship is not able to even dock at the ports. And at the same time, there is no fixed schedule of departure and incoming for the ships as well. And this is happening because of all the things happening around us. And before that, if we go back to the pre-COVID situation, so India had gained the traction on the reduction in the transit times, whether it is the turnaround time at the ports or turnaround time at the airports. India last year or 2 years back had issued new guidelines for the creating this free time at the ports and airports. That was the intention, was to push the transit time faster, like movement of the goods faster. But yes, during COVID, it is obviously we faced it.
And is there any opportunity
on the documentation side? See, opportunity, like I said, India has been focusing on the technology-based warehousing, which will create the faster turnaround of the goods to the last user and to the ports and to the airports. We have seen a lot of investments coming in for last maybe a decade in the warehousing sector, and not only the standalone warehouse operators, but there are integrated warehouse parks now with CFSs, with other ITs. So that is one part, because warehousing was seen in India as a very, very laid back kind of infrastructure, but which is now growing, and I'm sure with the opportunity coming in and the thrust of the government also on the infrastructure, we will see a lot of efficiency getting built in the warehousing end, which is the biggest part of the total logistic value chain.
Fantastic. Now, Paramjeet, I've got some couple of questions around. I've just got a Q&A here as well. The question is around what is the best way to find business opportunity in India from your perspective, now that we've got some issues around, the travel ban, and it's difficult to get into trade shows, fairs that was happening, that was connecting people. I know that INZBC work with High Commission very closely, and we do promote a lot of opportunities that are happening in India. But from your perspective, is there a change? Do you know any changes that happen now, or is it too early to comment at this stage?
See, as you rightly said, Jay, in New Zealand, COVID-19 has fortunately come under good control, and people have started moving beyond that. Alert level has been down, etc. But India is still in the middle of it. So it is, I would say, rather premature to think of how we are going to go about it. But yes, let me inform you that in an unprecedented thing, our Commerce and Industry Minister talked to all of us, all the commercial representatives all over the world to ensure that we are working proactively to promote business, to promote bilateral relations. Subsequently, we also had a video conference with the Joint Secretary in charge of New Zealand and Australia and all of this region. So definitely strategizing part has started. We are also planning a meeting of stakeholders from both the sides. I have already spoken to Gary about this, wherein our minister may also drop in. So these are the things we are at planning stage right now, but definitely the focus is very much there, to take our economy back on track and to do all that is possible.
Fantastic. I've got one more question. I understand that technology and pharmaceutical, India actually rank really ahead in these two markets. What are your thoughts about pharmaceutical industry, especially around what India is doing to support various countries at this stage who are producing those medicine and supplying those medicine, and also IT? What are your thoughts about that, Paramjeet?
No, definitely. See, pharma, particularly the COVID-19 crisis, has really put a spotlight on India as the pharmaceutical factory of the world. We supply up to 20% of the generic medicines to the world by volume, and up to 50% of the vaccines. In fact, Serum Institute of India is the biggest vaccine manufacturer in the world. And despite our own adverse situation, in the spirit of fraternity, we offered millions of tablets of paracetamol and other medicines to our friendly countries, to Africa, to America even. So yes, pharma is definitely, and as far as investment is concerned, FDI up to 100% is allowed. So it is definitely a bright area where foreign countries can come in and do well.
Fantastic.
Jay, can I
Coming
just
back to Mark? Yeah, I just wanted to actually get your comment, Mark, on this. What are your thoughts?
Well, this comes back to my comment around localization, and the pharma example is good. So there has been talk in government, the likes of Winston Peters has raised the challenge of getting hold of PPE gear. We only have one major pharmaceutical company, that being Douglas Pharmaceutical, it's a very small player, that basically talking at, could we de-risk it by basically onshoring again our own, or boosting our own pharmaceutical capability or manufacturing capability? That brings back to the question for Indian companies, consider effectively investment into New Zealand to implant the facilities here. So there is talk in government around that. Pharmaceutical is just one example of where we think we need more resilience in our supply chain or access to the medicines or the PPE gear, which all of you know is the mad scramble around the world, and who is the highest bidder to secure PPE masks. And so there is talk in government here along those lines.
Fantastic, Mark. I want to ask you another question because you're already there. Now, you talked about this ecosystem of procurement. Do you see a value of now various businesses working together to actually achieve a goal instead of actually working in a linear way that they were working in the past in isolation? Do you think that people will actually share resources to get the answer to work through this COVID-19?
So the answer, it's a very good question. So I do a lot of work in strategic sourcing, again, mainly in the primary industries. We're a very small country, so we're a small player and reliant on importing not only products but services from overseas. So yes, for a number of years we've been talking to some of the big players, whether it's your Fonterras, your Sinlays, or your big meat companies, effectively working together, collaborating in terms of putting together the volumes of the product or service that we need and going out in a collaborative way to market. So yes, I do see that more of that appearing in the future. Also possibly, rather than having your individual procurement departments, category managers, purchasing managers, all in-house, even to the extent where you may buy that in as a shared service.
Fantastic. Prediman, can I ask you one question as well, please?
Yes, please.
This is in relation to, you spoke about new solution in the market, especially you talked about the opportunity in the IT space. Where do you see, how do you see New Zealand can actually help in that regard? New Zealand has always been very famous for Kiwi ingenuity. Like we always come with a creative solution to deal with one of the toughest problems in the world. How do you see New Zealand playing part in that, finding new solutions in the market?
See, like pre-COVID or olden days, we can't now live with isolation as an organization or as a country, as a community.
Yeah.
I think collaboration is now the buzzword. With whatever countries can collaborate and create a solution for anything, be it IT, be it any other manufacturing sector. So IT has been an enabler. We have seen in the manufacturing, in the service, in the warehousing. When we say the social distancing, IT has created robotics solutions to the hospitals. So, and in a very short time period. So IT is something which is the most important thing in everybody's life, whether it is personal or it is a business life. So if New Zealand as a solution, India should be open and will be open to adopt it and collaborate. And I'm sure vice versa as well. And IT in India has been traditionally very strong. A lot of big Indian companies have become global because of the IT base. And this is a good connect and good strategic partnership.
Fantastic. Paramjeet, there are a few countries in the Asian continent who pretty much dominated the manufacturing for the whole world. Now, with the recent COVID-19 situation, do you see India taking a lead in manufacturing and becoming a manufacturing hub, replacing those countries who sort of lost sort of brand in the market?
See, yeah, without naming any one particular country, yes, definitely. That is what Make in India campaign is all about, for all the reasons that I have already enumerated. India is looking forward to welcoming all the companies that are interested in switching over, and we are there. Yeah.
Fantastic. Now,
I just want to add this point. It's not only about India. Now, even globally, every country is looking at us. Like they see us as a country who is ready to collaborate, who is having the ethical business practices, who is having the manpower, resource base, and willingness to cooperate and collaborate. Thank you.
Mark, what are your thoughts about how do Kiwi company will play this important role in this mix?
Say again, repeat.
What are your thoughts about a situation like in here? How do we collaborate, like India and New Zealand can collaborate in this space of manufacturing, in India becoming a maybe manufacturing hub, but Kiwi companies playing an important part in that?
I'm not sure I'm the right person to answer that. I think you may have to go to government. I think we're a very small player. I mean, we're a tiny country with 5 million people who we bat above our weight. The answer to that, I don't know right now. I think my bigger concern whilst I agree made in India or make in India is an interesting prospect given some of the tension that exists across various countries in the world right now without naming them. My biggest concern I have right now is that we may revert to protectionism, so that countries will look internally, will protect their markets, will retrench. And that's my biggest concern, and trade wars. And we're already seeing that, particularly between the US and China. It's been happening even pre-COVID. My concern is that it may increase in terms of magnitude.
So you see any impact because of the countries that you name, because of those two countries having difficulties in deliveries in New Zealand due to this issues, would that have an impact in New Zealand itself, or
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
I mean, we've seen one example of comments being made in Australia where China has now cut off the meat exports. So one needs to tread carefully. There's I think trade wars. We're already seeing it now, and protectionism. That's what
Fantastic.
would be my biggest concern.
All right, I've got a question for everyone here. Can we see a free trade agreement signed between India and New Zealand soon?
Yeah, as a government representative, I would say we hope so, provided all our mutual concerns are taken on board. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, I think we've done a fantastic in terms of covering pretty much all the questions that we could best answer in abilities from the Q&A, and all my questions I had. I hope everyone actually got some value out of this this meeting that we just had. And Gary, our INZBC Secretariat, will share the presentation of everyone to all the attendees that attended. And I see that we're already running out of time. We've got only 2 minutes left. So is there any final comments before we switch it off? Anybody?
Jay, I will only thank you for giving us this opportunity for exchange of ideas, which is what we need at this juncture primarily. And let's hope we get over this, pandemic soon, and get back on our jobs and live the normal that we used to. I hope a vaccine comes through pretty quickly. Yeah.
Fantastic. It's India or New Zealand producing it. That'll be amazing.
No, but definitely whoever produces it, India will have a big role in it in terms of scaling it up. The kind of capacity we have, everybody will be looking up to India to, mass produce it. That is for sure.
Fantastic. All right, Prediman, any final comments from you?
No, I would agree with Paramjeet. Let us sail through this difficult time, and live happily. Thank you.
Mark, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you want to say?
Thank you for inviting us.
Look, fantastic. I think all three of you have been absolutely gem to talk to, and what a wisdom. Like, I think we've actually achieved quite a bit in this 1 hour meeting. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it on behalf of INZBC board, and we would like to see you again in the future. So our Secretariat, Gary, will be in touch with you, and we will contact you again. So for now, goodbye, and thank you so much.